Welcome to another episode of the Mind Deck Books podcast. Surprise special guest. Welcome back, Brad.
Thank you.
So excited to talk to you.
It's good to be back.
Finally, you came back. You've been one of the biggest motivating elements for me personally on the podcast.
I'm happy to hear that.
Because you're the only person who tells me directly that you want to hear the next episode. Many people listen to it, but they don't tell me they listen to it. Paolo. But
I always tell you when I listen to it. That's not true.
Well, Paolo's
Especially when I'm not listening.
a frequent speaker on the podcast, so I suppose he doesn't need to say that.
But anytime we meet, you're like, yeah, listen to this podcast. Where's the next episode coming out? So thank you.
Of course, I enjoy it.
Appreciate you being a strong motivational force.
Yeah. I love it.
Also, welcome back, Paolo. I hope that you will be here more often, like I said on the Hyperion episode.
I mean, I've been here for 2 straight episodes and we're going to record a few more after this.
Planning a trilogy soon about Jade. So I hope you're green as it gets.
I sent you a picture the other day.
Yes, I will.
About that. So.
That's something I'm very much looking forward to.
Yeah.
So today we're discussing a book that's one of the most famous books in the world, probably, especially as Eastern Europe goes. And obviously I had to study it at school. Did you have to read this for school?
I personally did not, but I know of people in the same school that did.
Okay.
So, yeah, and I think it's quite a common book to read in class.
So Brad is from Australia. In Italy, I guess you had to study that, right, Paolo?
No.
No?
No, not at all. We do study English and American literature, but we should study more recent literature in the last year of high school, but usually we fall behind. And so, yeah, we rarely get past like the early 20th century.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
We recently talked about Dostoevsky with somebody, and I thought it's one of the most renowned, world famous writers. But no, in the US they don't care. Do they care in Australia?
I've got no idea. But I think if you're doing like a political science type course, then this kind of book will be covered. Yeah, I suppose it depends on the major.
So today we're talking about Animal Farm from not Orson Welles, but George Orwell.
Yeah.
I get that mixed up as well.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
We talked about George Orwell in much detail on our 1984 episode 38, so check that out. And dare to say it might be our best episode.
I don't know. Every time I remember that episode, the only thing I can think about is Orwell judging me because I put sugar in my tea.
It was a bunch of clips from a documentary about Orwell, so we are not going to talk about the writer so much because we discussed that in depth on episode 38. So please check that one out. I think it's no exaggeration, one of our best episodes, definitely. But this time, Animal Farm, I'd like to stress that we are not trying to make this podcast for you people who study for exams or or you people who know about this. You're just a bunch of guys trying to talk about books because we like it. And I would like to say I have no claims to be an expert on any of this, so it's just the perspective of somebody who reads it today. What is it like? What does it mean to you personally? And another reason we're doing this is it's Brad's favorite book.
Well, I wouldn't say it's my favorite, but it's up there. It's a really good book, and it has deeper meanings that you can ponder about.
It's very, very, very easy to consume, so to speak.
Yeah.
Even the people who had to read it at school, they would still get something out of it, I dare to say. I remember I had to read it and I had to watch it, the movies and stuff, movie adaptations. And I was kind of hating it because I hated books I had to read, but I still kind of didn't mind it. It's like there were other books I hated much more than this. Did you watch the movie?
Was it like an animated movie?
Yes.
I saw it on YouTube, but I didn't watch it.
It's a 1954 animated movie and then 1999 live action TV adaptation.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Awesome.
With like animatronic animals that look very creepy.
Interesting.
The latter one changes the story a bunch, and it's not very good, people say. I haven't watched it. The animated one, I think it's pretty well done.
Okay.
It has like early Disney vibes, right? The animation.
And Patrick Stewart voices Napoleon.
Patrick Stewart?
Okay.
It's just interesting.
That is interesting. I can't imagine.
Our farm is now truly Animal Farm.
Can't imagine.
So this book is only 120 pages or so long. Came out in 1945. Yes, 45. So we all reread it very recently.
I read it for the first time.
Oh,
wow.
really? Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe you can start. What do you think? Did you like it?
As the noob of the group. Yeah, I really liked it. I mean, it's a very simple story. Clearly, that was the intent. Yeah, I never felt like... the problem with some of these books sometimes is, even if they want to be symbolic or like metaphoric, sometimes they tend to be like either too...
too abstract.
Yeah, too abstract and like hard to understand what the author actually wants to say, or they could be like too direct, and so it's like a failed metaphor because it's not really a metaphor if you're just essentially just saying the same thing, just changing a few words.
So it worked for you in that sense?
Yeah, it worked really well. Yeah.
Orwell said in an interview that he was trying to fuse political purpose and artistic purpose into one whole. Do you think that was accomplished?
Sure.
Okay.
Who am I to say no?
So how did you enjoy rereading it, Brad?
Yeah, so it was like maybe 2 years or so that I read it last. And the first time I read it, I thought that it was quite an interesting insight about how somebody would rise to that kind of power, like, for example, Hitler in a totalitarian society.
It's like an adult fairy tale with very dreary undertones.
Oh, there's no happiness in this novel whatsoever. There's zero happiness.
So I remember when I watched the movie at school, I think I watched the animated one. I remember the action when the animals get shot and all this.
Oh, really?
And I didn't care at all about the communism or anything.
Yeah.
Completely past, like...
It was just funny.
Yeah, I was just like, these animals talk and they got shot.
Wow.
That's my memory.
Interesting.
And of course I had to like study it at high school and stuff like that. And I remember the ending being completely different. I reread it and I was surprised. I was sure it ended completely differently. So we'll talk about it in the spoilers quotation marks. I also didn't know that one of the main human characters is called Mr. Pilkington, which is very amusing to me because of Carl Pilkington.
Who?
Carl Pilkington. I was sure you didn't know who that was. But
No.
Do you know Ricky Gervais?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he has a comedy show. And he writes movies and he writes like TV shows, and one of his best friends is like a British guy who is very ignorant, and he did shows with him like Idiot Abroad.
Oh yeah, I've seen that one.
So the guy who's super dumb, his name is Carl Pilkington.
Ah, that's him. Okay.
So I didn't know that he's in this book.
He's a funny guy.
Interesting.
So I didn't know the big Napoleon had a conversation with Carl Pilkington. It's like hilarious.
Mr. Pilkington. What was the other one? Frederick, was it?
Yeah,
Frederick.
And Mr. Jones.
Mr. Jones was
Mr. Jones goes to a bar called Red Lion, which is like the name of half the Irish pubs in Italy.
Oh, really?
I don't know if it's because it's just a common name in England as well, or if it's just because of Animal Farm, but
okay.
Yeah, it is a pretty shitty bar I used to go to when I was in university. Yeah.
I also remembered that this book is super blunt. I thought that the analogies, like Paolo was talking about, and the
quite
message
connected.
are super in your face.
Yeah.
But no, I don't think it's the case.
Yeah, I don't think so.
So that's actually what I really like about Orwell's writing, also in 1984, that he says things and implies things without saying them very clearly.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
Yeah.
There's only one point at the end of the book where it's very blunt, and that where the human character says that it's the same with the animals, like the lower class of the humans.
Yeah.
That's the only line in the whole book that's very blunt.
Yeah, it's kind of like explaining the undertone.
It's like, in case you didn't get it, guys, this is what I meant. What it meant. Like,
But he still did it in a kind of vague way, but in conversation with the pigs and the humans while they were having their celebration.
So, would you recommend this book today to people who listen to this podcast? Would you recommend it? Definitely.
Of course.
Well, why
of
not?
course. If you're interested in hearing about like the news and what's happening in the world, like with governments around the world, it's interesting to hear the different perspective. If you're living in North Korea, it might be more valuable.
I was reading before, like in the introduction of the edition, we have that. Actually, it's of course not published in North Korea or China or Iran, or like a few other countries. So yeah, that's kind of not too surprising.
Also, the book cover you bought recently, it's got Stalin with the big mask on
Yeah,
it.
I really don't like that. Like,
Is that Stalin?
yeah, it is Stalin
didn't
with
know
the
that.
mask. Yeah, I don't know. It's,
That was actually one of my questions because I asked these things. I'm like, do you know who Dostoevsky is? And do you know who Stalin is? And then I show up.
Stalin is.
Do you
I
know-
mean, I would hope.
No, let me rephrase. I was like, do you know this guy?
Yeah.
And I showed a photo.
Yeah.
And she didn't.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So, I don't know. Like, do you know what Stalin looks like, Brad?
No, I mean, until now you just said it. But
Yeah, see, like, I don't think people know.
Okay.
Like, this is a very new thing for me.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that all these people are so infamous.
Yeah.
But,
I mean, there are so many memes with Stalin.
okay.
Are you know
memes,
what?
but-
Are you not like looking at memes?
Yeah, okay, but I meant our parents,
Mm-hmm.
they would never think in Europe that somebody wouldn't know who that was.
Yeah.
But meanwhile in Asia, or meanwhile in Australia, meanwhile in the US, like maybe they just didn't care.
I mean, I think in Europe we care about history much more than
That's true.
in many other countries, which I don't think it's a negative thing, but maybe I'm very biased. Yeah.
It's like
I mean, knowing how Stalin looks like, it's not inherently important, I guess. Like,
obviously.
Like, if you know who he is and everything else, I guess it's fine, even if you don't know how he looks like, but...
Like for my grandmother, saying Lenin was like a swear word almost.
wow.
Like it was like a thing, like, you know. But then in the US, they just don't even know who that is. It's so strange.
It's kind of like brushed against in history classes.
It's almost like the same theme like this book. Like you get into this bubble, and if you don't know any different, then you can't imagine it could be different. So
yeah, I mean, I think that has more to do with just general ignorance regarding like history and geography, which is sadly pretty common overall in the world.
So yeah, that's kind of a message of this book, isn't it? Like, know your history, please.
Well, it's to know your history enough so that we can avoid, so that people can understand when this kind of leader is getting in power.
So one of the biggest messages for me personally is the manipulation of language in order to push people into doing things and control them, and meanwhile doing it in the way like we say the frog is going to be boiled slowly because it doesn't notice how it's getting warmer. Like you have a thing that's very bad happening so slowly and so in a twisted way that you don't notice it,
You get adjusted along the way.
and then you get used to it and you don't see anything else so much that it's too late.
It is an element of the story. I don't think that's the message. More than that, I would say it's more about how essentially ignorant people are easily controlled.
Yes.
You know, how most people can't learn, like in the story, most characters can't learn how to read for themselves. And because they can't read how to read for themselves, essentially they are much easier to control because they have no reference about what was actually decided in the past and what actually they were fighting for in the past. To me, that's a much stronger message in the story, more than like a slow change over time. There are some pretty fast changes in the book too. So
That's true. So obviously this is an analogy, a direct satire, direct critique on real historical events, which I don't want to talk about too much, but I read some things that I didn't know, like who is supposed to be who in the story. Like I didn't know that Karl Marx was supposed to be the first pick.
Okay.
Old mayor,
Like,
somebody.
yeah,
Major.
Old major.
Yeah.
So he's kind of starting with the ideology of this.
Yeah.
So that's why he's supposed to be Karl Marx. I had no
Yeah,
idea.
like he has a dream.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And then Snowball, the pig,
Yeah.
is supposed to be
Trotsky.
Trotsky. Did you know who Trotsky was?
Yeah, of course.
I didn't.
Really?
Yes.
No idea.
Okay. I mean, he's also in 1984. Like we talked about this too.
Oh yeah, I
Maybe
forgot. I forgot, yes.
Yeah.
So that's the thing I should know, but I don't. So already, it's also a problem with me. Even though...
Yeah, I mean, in 1984, it was less evident. Like, it was evident that, you know, the big brother was Stalin. In this one, it's super clear that these are Stalin and Trotsky. Like,
Okay.
So many things cover history basically step by step. So,
There was another guy who was supposed to be Mr. Jones, but I don't know that guy either.
and Mr. Jones is the Tsar. Like the Emperor of Russia?
Yeah. But I don't know, like, I know that, but I don't know his name. Like, I didn't know that name.
Was it
That's okay.
Alexander? I forgot the name of the Tsar.
And then the other human characters, do you know who those supposed to be?
Well, the first who come over to attack the farm, they are the supporters of White Russia. That's part of history that now it's kind of like shrugged under the rug. Essentially, when several European powers, and I think the US too, invaded Russia after World War One. Because essentially every war between World War One and World War Two has been removed from history. But yeah, they invaded Russia because they were afraid that other countries might turn communist too. So it was kind of like similar to what happened after the French Revolution. And those are the other humans. So the other humans are like, France, England, and the US. And then Frederick is Germany. And Pinkerton is England.
Okay, I didn't know that.
I mean, Frederick is clearly a German name. And the fact that for the whole time Napoleon was basically pretending to ally with him, and then in the end Frederick attacked him anyway. That's basically what happened with Hitler and the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. Okay. Where basically they allied at the beginning of World War II to partition Poland, but basically they already knew that they would end up fighting anyway, so Stalin essentially was allying himself with England.
Is there any significance to the windmill being something real? Or is it just a thing that people have to build? So I didn't know what that meant, if that meant anything real.
I think that was a symbol of the industrialization of Russia. Because
I meant like in general, of course.
Yeah, I don't think there was anything more specific than that.
Okay. I just wanted to, because it seems like you know so much more than I do.
I mean, maybe there is like again. Okay. I'm not an expert on anything.
No. So I would also recommend it, but to be honest, not really, because everybody already knows this, and it's a very easy read. But it's not like an exciting read. It's more like be depressed a little bit.
But like, for example, I knew about the story and I knew about the book, but I had never read it, and I kind of regret that I hadn't done that earlier. So for other people like me who know the story and think like, well, I know enough, I probably shouldn't read it, I would still recommend to read it. I feel like I said something similar for 1984.
1984, I think, is a great novel. I would 100% recommend it.
Right, 1984 the difference is that it's a good book regardless. For this one, I think it's a good allegorical fairy tale.
Yeah, so before we get into our usual summary, anything you want to say?
I am surprised, I would say this, I'm surprised that this story is not used by more vegans like to kind of like promote their ideas.
And also maybe like for people that aren't super interested in politics and like history and whatnot, you know, they might be more inclined to read something that's like an easy read, right?
Yeah.
So it might be a good introduction to those kinds of people, to introduce them to politics and just, you know, a more global perspective.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think that was Orwell's goal. If you read the introductions to the story he wrote, like he said that he was trying to write something that would carry this political message that he really wanted to convey, but which could be really boring or like complex or not so interesting for many people, in a way that could be appreciated by people who are almost literate. And I think he absolutely accomplished this. You don't need to have a background in history or politics or anything like to understand and appreciate the meaning of what's being told here in the story.
Yeah, the line
That's
themes.
true.
Yeah.
So before we move on to the actual plot, 2 quick questions. One of them is that I claimed the 1984 novel probably changed the world in the sense of preventing what it's about. Did this do that a bit or somehow in any way?
No.
Okay.
No. What's happening now?
Yeah, I mean, like, I said the same about 1984. I don't think a book is preventing anything, but generally as part of a change in culture and how people perceive certain things, maybe. But then you even said that, like, people don't know who Stalin is or, like, Trotsky is. Like, nowadays, like, what? We aren't changing anything.
That's very sad. I didn't want to hear that, but okay.
I mean, it is true. I mean,
so the second question is that I looked up that the Times Magazine top 10 or top 100 English language novels. This is on like not the top one, but it's like very much up there. Also, the Modern Library list of best 20th century novels. It's like the 30th place or something. BBC's Big Read Super Poll survey. Everybody put it on the top. It won the Hugo Award in 1996 and many other awards. So is this one of the best novels of all time, ever.
Is this a novel? I'm not sure.
Okay,
it is.
novelette. I just meant like literally work-wise. Is this one of the best that's ever existed? Like people are trying to say that in like if you look at articles about literature and literary work that's accessible and has meaning and somehow influences public opinion. So people are claiming, like if you look online, that that's this. So is it that important? Is my question.
I always felt like these kind of top 100 or whatever kind of like lose their meaning very quickly.
Exactly.
Because, okay, let me ask you this. Have you ever read any Shakespeare screenplay?
Yes.
You have?
Hate it.
Okay. If I ask you to tell me about the topics, like some of the most important topics in Shakespeare's tragedies, can you name two?
No.
Like, no, right? I don't think you're ignorant or anything. It's just that... But I'm willing to bet that if you take like who are the most influential, like top 10 most influential writers in English literature history, like Shakespeare is probably number 1 or number 2. Like, so what does that mean?
That's a very good point.
Right?
It might be this book because it's so easy to understand. It's so easy to read.
Sure, but...
In the terms of accessibility versus the message it's trying to tell, I would say it's one of the most important.
No, I completely agree, but again, I wouldn't classify them. Like, it's just...
Okay.
Yeah.
Alright, so as usual, let's get into the plot. Brad has made a lot of notes. I'm very excited.
It's just
Fellow note taker.
So before we start, I want to quickly go over the characters. So there is the old major, which we already talked about. There is Napoleon, which is probably the most important character.
Yeah.
The pig. There is Squealer, the pig. There's Snowball, the pig.
Yeah.
And all the other animals are not pigs, so they're not important.
Well, there are some other pigs, but they're not named.
There's Boxer, the super strong
I
horse.
think, well, I would say, actually, I wouldn't say that Napoleon is the most, it's the most impactful character on the story.
It's like the most important symbol of
But we
something,
never see his perspective,
Yes.
which I think is very intentional. Like, we always see the perspective of, like, Boxer and the other, like, common animals.
I will mention Benjamin,
Yeah.
which I think is Paul.
He's my favorite character.
Do you feel like it's Paul?
Really? I mean, isn't it offensive to say he's the donkey?
Just watching it from afar, like he's not a stupid donkey. He's actually one of the most clever animals. And he's just watching it. He's just like, oh, I can't deal with this.
He's just the
gonna
cynical
go to
donkey.
shit again.
Yeah.
wise and
Yeah.
cynical.
I mean, he's the guy who knows that everything changes, but nothing does.
So please listen us write in the comments. Do you think Benjamin is Paul? Right, so how does the book start, Brett?
Alright, so the first few pages is Orwell, he's introducing the animals on the farm. So, yeah, for example, like the horse is unintelligent and he becomes under easy command of the human as well as the pigs.
So
Yes.
these animals are at the farm and
We have
at first they're under control of Mr. Jones.
At first, yeah, we have the owner, which is Mr. Jones, he's the owner of Manor Farm.
Yeah.
And then we have the pigs, and he's given them all a name and their own individual personality. Yeah, what do we have next? We have that, we have a speech by a dying animal.
It's the old major guy.
The old major, yes.
Yeah.
yes,
The very
yes.
old boar or
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Like boar, I think in this case it's used as kind of like stallion for
Okay.
like he's a pig. It's just
There were
like
a few-
a pig used for like reproduction.
There were a few fun English words I learned.
Yeah.
Tushies or tashies. You know that's another word for tusks.
Oh,
okay.
I was surprised.
Yeah.
So I think old major didn't have his tushies like cut off or something.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It was a cute detail.
Yeah.
So, he expresses his disdain for the humans and how the humans are using the animals for their gluttonous desires, taking the milk from the cows and leaving none for the fowls. And during the speech, there's talk of a rebellion. And then soon after that, Mr. Jones storms into the barn. After being revved up from the speech, they decide to fight back and rebel themselves. And that's the first sort of rebellion that started.
But that was not right after the night of the speech. It was a few months later.
Right.
Yeah.
So they succeed. They overthrow
Yeah.
the farm. Mr. Jones is
Because he was drunk.
he's a horrible drunkard.
Yeah.
He has no idea what's happening.
Yeah. He went to the Red Lion.
I'm sure, yes.
Yeah.
I'm sure he's thinking he's hallucinating all these animals beating him up.
Yeah. I mean, that's one thing which the humans never wonder why, like, the animals are
Yeah.
actually talking or
Right.
like
Never questioned.
building things. Yeah, it's always like
Standing on their hind feet.
Yeah.
Spare legs.
Always like okay, that happens.
So they successfully fight back, and the humans run away. Mr. Jones runs away, and they celebrate with the pigs leading the way into the house. They make a list of rules for the animals. I think they later call them the commandments.
Yeah,
It's the seven commandments.
Right. Which are constantly being changed, but
Yes.
we'll get into that later.
So to sum up, the commandments are just don't be a human.
Yeah,
Right.
Animals are equal. Humans are bad.
Yes.
And they make a song about it.
Yeah.
Called The Beasts of England. which
Yes,
is really
yes.
fun. And then some of the animals can't understand any of this. And they are like, okay, for you guys who can't read, who can't understand, it's like this. 4 legs bad, 2 legs... two legs bad. I already messed it up.
Yeah. 4 legs good, 2 legs bad.
Exactly.
Yeah. And the sheeps are constantly repeating it.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is very fun in the audiobook.
Really? Well, I can imagine that.
The sheep developed a great liking for this maxim, and often as they lay in the field, they would all start bleating, 4 legs good, 2 legs bad, 4 legs good, 2 legs bad, and keep it up for hours on end, never growing tired of it.
So so they make the list, the commandments, and they set off to work on the farm by themselves, only the animals to work together and increase the results for themselves without anybody taking from them.
And immediately strange things start happening, like for instance the milk, now they can't milk the cows, so the pigs milk the others with their hooves somehow.
Yeah.
Like, their trotters. I was trying to imagine how this works. Okay.
Don't.
And they have a bunch of buckets full of milk and some apples, and conveniently only the pigs get those.
Yeah.
Yeah, apparently the pigs are the smartest animals. Yeah.
So next there is Snowball, who is also a pig, and he gets an idea.
Yeah. So the 2 leaders of the rebellion were like the 2 disciples of the old major, were these 2 pigs called Napoleon and Snowball. As we said before, they're basically Stalin and Trotsky. The pigs kind of like represent the leaders of the Communist Party, whereas the dogs are basically the military, and the other animals are like the workers. And
There was a dark detail I forgot, that the dogs are stolen from the mothers and bred in secret, and like they grow up in secret, and then it's revealed that it's the bodyguards of the
the bodyguards of Napoleon. They grow up.
I didn't remember they took the puppies from the mothers.
There's also the crow, who's the only animal who runs away because he represents the Orthodox Church. And he's like, he believes in Candy Mountain! Yes. Candy Mountain, Charlie!
So that's a thing. So the Candy Mountain represents just...
Heaven.
Candy Mountain, Charlie!
Never heard you this excited ever.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
No! I don't know.
Okay, let's pause.
Yes.
You have to watch Charlie the Unicorn. You have never watched Charlie the Unicorn?
But I forgot. Yes, that's when they cut out his liver or something. Is that?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I watched that. I forgot it. Okay.
I'm sorry, disappointed.
No, I know this, but I forgot what it meant. So, okay. So what is the Candy Mountain then? Like
Candy
in
Mountain
this case?
In this case, it's just heaven.
Yes.
Like Moses is represents the Orthodox Church, and of course he turns his back to the revolution. So he's exiled, but then he comes back.
So Snowball gets an idea to build a windmill to make it easier for the animals to work.
Yeah.
So the animals are happy that the human owners are not making them slave away and work so hard, so they change things.
Just to quickly check in here, the horse that ran away to the town and was after like beauty and whatnot.
It's
What was
Muriel.
Muriel?
Yeah.
Was there any meaning behind her or like deeper underlying theme or anything?
I think, like, to me, she was basically just someone who was very vain and essentially was more interested in material possessions and was so indoctrinated by being owned by humans that she preferred that to freedom.
For me, it was different perspectives on what's happening in the story. So some people are ignorant, some people are acceptant and distant, some people are opposed, some people fight it, some people support it, and some people are happy about it. And they are very much comfortable. She is happy with the people. Like Muriel, she wants the people there. They give her sugar, they give her the ribbons in her mane. So she hates the discomfort of the revolution. So some people don't want the revolution, and they want the regime to be there to be comfortable. So that's a big part of this. So that's what it represents.
To be honest, it's kind of surprising. Like in the book, she was the only character like this.
And I think the other characters are just not mentioned, but there is always a portion of people like that.
They're like the nostalgics.
Don't want anything to change.
Well, a big part of that as well. They have Squealer. Squealer in charge, the propaganda master, right? That's a big point.
Like in the animation, because Squealer, it says that when he's speaking, he's like jumping and tweaking his ass. Like, how about that in the animation? Do you remember? Okay, I was very curious about that.
I was watching some clips on YouTube and I was very disturbed by the whatever animatronics, live action animals, especially the pig speaking. I was very curious at the ending scene with the animals and the humans, and the live action is very disturbing. I don't like it. The animation is of course fine, but so Napoleon basically tells Snowball to fuck off.
Well, before that there is a battle. The humans trying to get back the farm. They managed to win thanks to Snowball's tactics and his courage.
Snowball is injured and celebrated.
But then, while the pigs were starting to get some privileges, they still were having, these meetings every Sunday, which were more or less on an equal basis. And they were voting for things. But then, when they were finally voting whether to build the windmill, finally Napoleon reveals his hand and, shows his army of dogs. Basically throws Snowball out of the farm. Exiles him.
Things go dark.
And basically, he says that everything bad was Snowball's fault. And we start this cycle of him, Napoleon,
blaming other people
and saying things and immediately changing things. And then saying things and immediately saying that he didn't say those things. So he says that the windmill idea is the worst idea ever and whatever, we will never do that. And then next week, let's build the windmill. So that just happens over and over. And he changes the 7 commandments slightly. I like the part with the whiskey.
Like no animal should ever drink alcohol in excess.
Yes. There's like a scene where everybody hears that Napoleon is dying. And then he suddenly gets better. And he has a new rule.
Because he was drunk, right?
He was hungover.
He was drunk.
It was completely hungover.
That was funny. That was a good one.
So then it gets worse and worse and worse.
The conditions for the animals are getting worse, getting less food and being worked harder. But essentially every time, something bad is happening, they are being reminded like, would you rather be under Jones? And, they are so convinced that things were worse under Jones that essentially they would rather, accept less favorable conditions rather than risking the return of Jones.
So they slowly change the commandments and the pigs just do more and more human-like things and they just get more and more for themselves. They sleep in beds and they change the rules. So the original rule was you can't sleep in a bed. They said
you can't sleep in a bed with sheets. With sheets.
They're like, we removed the sheets. So we can sleep there. I don't want to skip to the end, but it escalates to the first rule to be the most obvious. All animals are equal. But the most famous quote probably from this book.
Some are more equal than others.
Yes.
Or like 4 legs good, 2 legs bad.
Yes,
that changes at the end.
This reminded me so much of the 1984, how there is like this gut bad feeling about what's happening.
When the pigs come out with the they have like a festival when they start walking out on 2 legs.
So they basically they have whips and they start to be basically men, and the sheep that are literal sheep.
Right.
So they every time something happens,
sheeple.
Yes, they would somehow just smooth it over. They would be just like, okay, let's sing the song "The Beast of England," and then at one point they banned this song even then, and then okay, let's just sing the 4 legs good, 2 legs bad.
Yeah.
And then at this point, the pigs start walking out and the sheep start singing just to drown them in the song and completely have them not be able to say anything else. And they start singing 4 legs good,
2 legs better.
2 legs better. It was like a moment. I didn't remember this in the...
Yeah.
So that's like a gut punch too.
Yeah.
All the sheep burst out into a tremendous bleating of 4 legs good, 2 legs better. 4 legs good, 2 legs better. It went on for 5 minutes without stopping.
Yeah, and then finally the pigs get the recognition from the humans and they start treating on equal terms, which was basically this was also like an introduction written by Orwell, was essentially a representation of the Iran conference, which is basically where finally the Western powers recognized the USSR as a real country, because until then essentially they were still recognizing Russia and the Russian government in exile as the real country and the USSR as usurpers. And finally, they are like, you are a real country, good job.
It's terrible when you say it like that.
I mean,
but it's true.
It is true. I mean, if you think about it, this is one thing that I didn't know, and I'm ashamed to say this, but I didn't know until maybe 6 or 7 years ago. Like, do you know that Taiwan is not officially recognized as a real country?
Yes, yes, but I know about it only because of what's happening recently.
Okay.
I didn't know it 10 years ago.
Yeah. For example, in Europe, people don't recognize, the governments officially don't recognize Taiwan as a real country. Very fun stuff.
So anyway, the pigs have a meeting with the humans and they play cards. And they ceremoniously agree to work together, and they even changed the flag, which was like an animal hoof or something, and now it's a skull.
No, it was just a green flag with nothing.
I thought it was a skull on it.
No. No, they removed the skull of Old Major, which was kind of like hung there, and they buried.
Oh.
Yeah. The flag becomes just a green flag.
I just remember the skit with this British comedy show where they have the skulls on the caps, and they are in the war, during the war in the trenches, and one of the guys looks at the cap and he's like, "Are we the baddies now? Are we the baddies?"
I have to watch it.
So then they play cards and they both play an ace of spades.
Yeah.
Both the human Mr. Pilkington.
Yeah.
Carol Pilkington plays an ace of spades, and Napoleon too.
Yeah.
And they start arguing like crazy. And the animals watch it from outside, and they can't tell anymore who's the animal and who's the person.
Yeah.
They keep saying how many chins each of them have. And that's very well displayed in the both live action version of the movie and the animated one.
Okay.
Because it's raining and the glass is kind of distorting the people inside and the animals are watching it. And I was sure the book ended by the animals going back and a new revolution starting. And I was sure there was a new pig, trying to distance himself from the pigs and be the new guy to make the revolution and restart the book. But that's not there.
That was it. Yeah, that's there.
Yeah.
So it ends by the line that the animals were not sure why the pigs looked so similar, or what's so different about the pigs. And then they find out it's that they look so similar to the people that you can't even tell them apart anymore. So that's how the book ends. We skipped a bunch of stuff.
I mean, there's stuff like the windmill getting destroyed and the battle with Frederick. But I mean, this is just like several episodes of the conditions getting worse. Like Boxer being sent to the slaughter.
That's also a point we probably should mention, that the strongest horse, whose tagline is "I must work harder."
I will work harder.
I will work harder.
Yeah, I think it's like it would be a good seishain.
Oh my god.
Like,
For those who don't live in Japan, that means I will try hard. And it's a very polite thing to say in Japanese.
Yeah.
Right.
Instead of good luck in Japanese, it's work harder, please.
Yeah. And he also says, his other motto was Napoleon is always right.
I think this is also one of the most famous scenes, because the horse called Boxer is the strongest, and his meaning in his life is to work harder, and when something bad happens, he always says that he will push harder and it will fix things.
Yeah.
And of course, at one point he breaks himself down and he gets sick, and they just take him to the knackers to make him into glue and just slaughter him. And there's this van that comes over, and the animals who can read, which are not many, notice that this is not a doctor's van.
Yeah.
So they take him to slaughter him, but Squealer jumps around and he explains that this is because the doctor's van is new and they didn't repaint the
they should have repainted the thing.
The sign is not correct, and he's gotten the best care in the hospital and the most expensive medicine.
And Squealer was there when he died.
And he was there. He listened to his last words, and the last words were,
long live leader Napoleon.
I think the last words were Napoleon is always right.
Napoleon, long live Animal Farm.
Yeah, and long live Animal Farm, of course. So he didn't talk about animalism and all this, but but it's.
I mean, animalism again. We talked about it was like the 7 commandments, and then the four legs good, 2 legs bad.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, it's all about the principles of animalism. The greater good and how you have to work harder.
And the other elements, Snowball being Trotsky, like essentially being accused of everything. Everything bad was him. Even his contribution to the battle was completely changed. This was like a very big debate, and something that completely changed the history of Europe and possibly the world is Trotsky's views that the revolution should expand in Europe. So Russia essentially should support communist cells in other European countries. So that there would be revolution everywhere. While Stalin was convinced that they should basically ignore the other countries and just focus on developing communism in Russia, which is the same thing that happens in the book, where Snowball wanted the pigeons to spread the revolution to the other farms, but Napoleon was like, we should focus on our own. And the other point was like the arbitrary executions of the animals, who basically just come forward to Napoleon and say, I was guilty of doing this. Like Snowball came to me in a dream and told me to do this. And they get slaughtered by the dogs. This essentially represents the Great Purge in Russia, where basically it was this period of time where Stalin killed so many people, both at the top. He killed like most of the military leaders, most of the political leaders, and also the reason why this was in the Ukrainian edition was that, so in Russia there was this class called the kulaki, which was basically landowners, like small landowners, and he wanted to completely remove them because they were kind of hard to control, and many of the kulaki were actually Ukrainian. So what he did is essentially he had artificial famine in Ukraine, which again is something that it's not really talked about, but a significant population of the Ukrainian population died in this famine. I forgot what the percentage was, but it was something crazy, like 15% of the population or something that died. Because, essentially he was trying to completely remove that social class of the kulaki, and also because the Ukrainians were kind of like pushing for more independence within the USSR. This was very similar to what happened at that point in the book.
Yeah, you haven't disappointed. Thank you for this.
You know your history.
Thank you, sir. Wow. Thank you for telling us about all that. I should know these things, but I don't.
Honestly, again, I didn't know about this too much until my cousin gave me a book about the famine in Ukraine. Yeah, I think not too many people really know much about this.
Yeah. To me, this is still one of the most significant things. Like, if you talk about books, I always think about this because of school and where I'm from. But it's also one of the things that I never enjoy because it's always kind of depressing. But it's necessary people know this.
Well, for me, it's like an easy read, but it's interesting. It's not just like a fairy tale as it's presented, but it has a deep underlying meaning, and there's a bunch of themes as well throughout, like with authoritarianism, blind loyalty with the animals on the farm, loss of freedom, freedom of speech, individuality, propaganda, manipulation, class struggle, social inequality.
I just wish there would be some tidbits of hope in this story. Or
there is nothing.
Or some
I'd say there are some small tidbits.
Like with Boxer?
Not really with Boxer. There is one page specifically, which I think is one of the few pages where you can tell, like, this is Orwell explaining his political point of view rather than narrating the story, where essentially he's explaining how the animals had this real dream about socialism, which again translates basically to humans, because Orwell was a socialist, in a sense that people really wanted this. Like, it is true that, their conditions originally improved, and like when they removed Jones, and that essentially capitalism is bad. That's kind of the point. And they do have this dream, and the reason why some of them kept enduring all of what was happening was because they had such a strong dream and such a strong desire for that type of freedom and that type of control over their own life and over their own work, that they were able to endure so long, accept everything that was happening. Which I think in that sense it's a positive meaning, because what it's saying is if things had turned out differently, maybe we would have ended up with a positive situation. The negative point is that things went back to being as when Jones was there, right? But it didn't have to go that way, and it's not what the people actually want. I think that's kind of like the only positive side of it.
Yeah, it's good the book is not telling you what to think, but I wish there was some kind of a opinion about how to prevent this or improve this, or even just what you said, Brad, that there's blind followers, and so what do you do about them? How do you not let those people feel like that?
By creating a book that's so transparent and easy to read for those kinds of people.
Yeah, exactly. And even in the book itself, one of the things that Novel was doing was trying to teach how to read to the animals.
Yes.
And essentially one of the big problems in the book is that the animals can't read. So they completely forget the commandments. So when they are changed, they don't really... They think like, oh yeah, maybe I misremembered.
That's true. Yeah, so I guess that's all. I hope that you listeners got something out of this. I hope that this wasn't just a boring history lesson. And
yeah, I forgot the question before we finish.
Okay.
Most important question. While you were reading, in your mind, who would have been the most delicious animal to eat?
That's a very good thing to say. Based on the, meat quality?
I think a squealer would have been really...
I think why squealer?
Because he's really fat.
Okay.
And I think he probably he doesn't do a lot of movement, and so his meat is very soft.
Probably based on meat quality, it has to be boxer.
Well, the boxer is really muscular, so
he'd be good for a stew.
Yeah.
A long cooked meal. Yeah, simmered, stewed.
My God.
Well, I mean, there were cows in the farm, right?
Yeah,
but
there were
no
cows.
cows had any names, or there was no
I
personified.
think one of them had a name.
Oh, really?
Maybe.
Oh, was it the Muriel that went to the?
No. She was a horse.
Yeah, there was. I didn't remember any cows, but yeah, if there was a cow as a character, I would choose that one because beef is the best.
That's a very good question.
Yeah.
Well, you're from Italy, so maybe the pigs you could turn them into salami or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
There's so much you can do with pigs.
That's true. That's true.
So thank you, Brad, for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Of course, you're welcome anytime you can make time.
Thank you.
Super busy, so thank you for making
We're
time
also
for this
busy.
episode.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you, listeners. See you on the next episode.
See you later.
Thank you very much for listening to this educational episode. Rate us on Apple Podcasts, follow us on Spotify and Audible. And on the next episode, we're celebrating that we have made it to 50. So finally, the time has come to talk about Dune by Frank Herbert. We've been referencing this book on almost every episode, and we couldn't wait to talk about this. So it's finally happening. So don't forget and join us for the big 50th episode next time.